Deep in the Oklahoma wilderness, on a dirt road that most people will never drive on, a truck was found sitting alone, perfectly still, like it had been parked with care rather than abandoned in panic. When police opened it, they expected chaos, maybe blood, maybe signs of a struggle. Instead, they found wallets neatly placed, phones untouched, and thousands of dollars in cash left behind, like it no longer mattered. In the backseat was the family dog, weak but alive, waiting for people who never came back. Whatever happened to the Jamison family didn't feel sudden, it felt decided. This story isn't about a killer hiding in the dark or a chase that went wrong. It's about a normal American family who drove into the mountains one morning and quietly vanished in a way that still makes investigators uncomfortable to talk about. Bobby Jamison, his wife Sherilyn, and their 6-year-old daughter Madison weren't criminals or drifters. They weren't trying to disappear. They were talking about starting over, buying land, slowing life down. Somewhere between that dream and the open road, something shifted. In 2009, the Jamison family talked often about leaving the noise behind and moving somewhere quiet, the kind of dream a lot of families have but never act on. They weren't reckless about it. They planned, saved money, and told relatives they were going to look at a piece of land near the Arkansas border, a remote area filled with hills, trees, and long stretches of silence. On October 8th, they packed their truck carefully with food, maps, and supplies, and they brought their dog along, which made it feel like a short trip, not a goodbye. They left in daylight, calm and prepared, expecting to return. When they didn't come back that night, no one panicked. People assumed plans changed or the trip took longer than expected. But as hours turned into days, the silence started to feel wrong. Calls went unanswered, messages never delivered. That's when the worry set in, the kind that doesn't shout but sits heavy in your chest. When the truck was finally found, it raised more questions than answers. It wasn't crashed, it wasn't damaged, it wasn't hidden. It was parked neatly on a dirt road deep in the wilderness, like Bobby had shut off the engine and fully expected to come back. Inside were the Jamisons' phones, their wallets, their identification, and a large amount of cash, things people instinctively grab even when they're scared. The dog was still locked inside, barely surviving. That detail alone stopped investigators cold, because you don't leave a child and you don't leave a pet unless you believe you'll be gone only for a moment. There were no signs of violence, no broken glass, no footprints clearly leading away from the truck, nothing that explained why a family would step out into unfamiliar wilderness without supplies. It felt like a pause in time, like the moment right before something goes terribly wrong, frozen and unanswered. As police spoke with relatives and friends, a disturbing pattern began to appear. In the months before the trip, Bobby and Sherilyn had grown increasingly paranoid. They believed people were watching them. They talked about threats that no one else could confirm. They installed surveillance cameras inside their home, not outside, but inside, like danger was already among them. One of those recordings later surfaced, and it's deeply unsettling to watch. Bobby is pacing, counting large amounts of cash, repeatedly looking upward like someone is standing just out of view. Sherilyn sits on the floor, completely still, staring ahead, unresponsive, as if she's already somewhere else mentally. It doesn't look staged, it doesn't look dramatic. It looks like fear that has been building quietly for a long time. Some believe the Jamisons were experiencing shared paranoia, feeding into each other's fears until reality felt unsafe everywhere, except the place they believed they were running toward. Others believe they knew something real and dangerous and were trying to escape it. But no theory explains why they would leave their vehicle, their supplies, and their only way back, and walk miles into dense wilderness with a child. Search teams combed the area for weeks, using helicopters, dogs, and volunteers. But the land was brutal. Thick forest, steep terrain, and endless places where sound, tracks, and evidence disappear. Slowly, hope faded. The case went quiet. For 4 years, the Jamison family existed only as a question with no answer. Then, in 2013, hunters made a discovery that should have solved the mystery but somehow made it worse. Skeletal remains were found deep in the forest, miles from the truck, in an area that didn't make sense if the family had simply gotten lost or injured. The remains were confirmed to be Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madison. There was no clear cause of death, no signs of violence, no way to know exactly how or when they died, because time and nature had erased the evidence. What haunted investigators most wasn't how they died, but how they got there. A family walking deeper into the woods together, carrying their child, step by step, believing that leaving the road behind was safer than staying on it. Picture that moment no one saw, a family standing at the edge of a dirt road, the truck behind them, the forest ahead of them, and a shared belief that staying was more dangerous than leaving. Imagine holding your child's hand and choosing the woods, not because it feels safe, but because it feels safer than whatever you think is coming. The Jamison family case remains unsolved, not because there are no theories, but because none of them fully explain why a family would walk away from food, money, shelter, and safety, and disappear into silence. Some believe mental illness pulled them away from reality. Others believe fear pushed them into a decision they couldn't undo.
But the most unsettling thought is this: whatever they believed was waiting for them on that road felt worse than dying in the woods. And sometimes the scariest mysteries aren't about what actually happened, but about what people believe is happening right before everything falls apart.